Trinity, talkradio.nyc.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Your boy is back, the one and only, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from the top of my house just below the roof. And man, oh man, it is warm in the attic today. It is a warm one. I think we sprung right through spring and went right into summer. It is just early June, but it is a hot one here in the attic. But people would say, Tommy D, why don't you get an air conditioner in the attic? And I was just in the kitchen getting more coffee. And my wife said, Tommy D, I'm getting you an air conditioner, put in the attic, a new one. So I have one of them ones that you move around, everybody. Like you got to put it by the window and all this kind of stuff. She's got to hook me up. So that's what it is. That's what it is. That's what having teamwork is all about, where you can have somebody hook you up and get you sorted out so you don't melt at the top of your house. All right. So every day, every week, every Friday, that is, I come up to the attic. I do the show Philanthropy in Focus. And what would we focus on? We're helping nonprofit organizations and their leaders tell their story and amplify their message. And the thing about it for me is this has become, man, it's become my mission. It's become something I'm involved with. I'm in conversations about nonprofits all day, every day, visiting nonprofit organizations, doing content like this with nonprofits. I'm now being brought in to be the MC at nonprofit events. Did one just Sunday night at the Suffolk Theater for an organization called Blessings Across Long Island, which makes sure young children in schools go home with food for the weekend because, as many of you might know, even here on Long Island, right? Oh my goodness, Long Island's not just the Hamptons. Here, even the Hamptons, there's need, gang. But even here on Long Island, there are, I think the number I read when I was on stage Sunday night was 313,000 people on Long Island are food insecure, and over 70,000 of those are children. And I started off the show as the MC saying, how do you learn when your tummy is grumbling because you're hungry, right? How do we do that? So there's so much more to be done, and that's, my show is not hyper local, but when I'm home on the hometown here on the island, it's just to learn these things and be able to teach people. It's what it's all about. Talk about teaching. If it wasn't for my relationships and my connections, if I'm not mistaken, Sam Leibowitz from here from talkradio.nyc was the one who connected today's guest, Noah Elliott Gotbaum and Tommy D. And if it's not for my network putting us together, well, then I don't know all these people. And yes, I am the nonprofit sector connector, but I only am because I hang out with other people who are looking out for me and making these types of connections. So I was talking about, I started to say about learning and things like that. Noah, good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm great, Tommy. Thanks for having me on.
I'm glad to have you, man. And I mean, we spoke only like just we spoke this week. We spoke like one time, like 3 or 4 months ago after Sam hooked us up. And after talking to you earlier this week and doing some research on you and your background and the great work, we're gonna learn a lot today, gang. We do a lot of learning here. We laugh. I've been known to cry here on the show. Maybe we don't do it today. We'll see what happens. I mean, the warmth might just make me cry, but I kid. But Noah has such a rich story, a rich background, and we're going to talk about the organization where he is currently the interim CEO, which is called Adams House, which is in Connecticut, which we'll get into all that and the great work that organization is doing. So, no, really, without any more, I just want to dive in. We talked about this. This is like that show. There used to be a show I've been talking about a lot on A&E called Biography, and it was like just tell somebody's story. And I mean, talk about a biography. I could read your bio. I have it here, but that's boring for me and probably even more boring for the listeners. I want to hear the story through your eyes, your journey. I always say, what drew you to the nonprofit sector? What brought you to the sector? What are those stories, those anecdotes? And then obviously we'll get into the work you're doing at Adams House. So please, I want to hear your story. That's why I showed up.
Ah, thanks, Tommy. I appreciate it. Um, I grew up in a social welfare household. My father was a labor union leader. My mother was a social worker and a teacher. Uh, we we always were kind of taught you gotta look out for others.
Yeah.
That was what I grew up in, and so and a lot of it was about politics too. It was
Mhm.
about changing the world through politics. Um, but during college, I worked in community development stuff with foundations. Um, and then when I came out, I spent a year on a choral fellowship out in LA doing different types of different types of public service work, and then came back to New York and knew that I really wanted to get involved in public service and nonprofit stuff, but also felt like you have to know what's going on in the private sector because they're the drivers of so much in terms of funding, in terms of policy, in terms of everything. So my day job was working in real estate and community development. Um, but that really wasn't enough. It was during the Reagan era. Uh, those who were around at that time um, kind of remember that New York was just raft of homelessness. It was really, really a difficult time. And so many of us had come out of college where we had great communities, and all of a sudden we're working in New York, uh, working in law firms and real estate firms and uh, banks and the rest, and wanted to get involved and saw what was going on in the streets, and there was really no way to get involved. Um,
So let me just stop you for a sec. So this is I have a friend, I haven't talked to him in a bit, but a man named Angel Rodriguez who founded an organization. I don't know if you know that name and the organization Avenues for Justice. And he talked to me about, he goes, Tommy, in the late 70s, the Lower East Side was a war zone. His words, not mine, but I've seen the pictures, Noah. And you mentioned the homelessness crisis during that era. I was born in 78, man. So
yeah,
Reagan was a president when I was born, but I don't know anything about that, right? I mean,
yeah,
when did I come online? Early 90s, I guess, to even be aware of things like that. I just, so the thing about it for me is I didn't live through that era, but I have friends who did. And, the city at that time, I'm out here on Long Island, gang, been here my whole life. I went to school at Baruch for a number of years in Manhattan. And I never felt like the city was a scary place in my era, right? But if I think back to like the 80s and stuff like that when I was a kid, Manhattan, Times Square, like that was a different world back then, right?
yeah. The whole city was a different world, and I'm not. The '70s. There's a lot of talk about how scary the city was and chaotic. Um, in the '80s, it was not uh, not really a scary place. It was just a place that was kind of out of control in terms of the poverty level and people living on the streets. It was the time of this, what they called it, the squeegee men.
Yeah, sure. Come right.
And you get a little taste of it over the last couple of years, where you have people sleeping in the subways and that being a little bit out of control. But at that time, you'd get up, you'd go to work, you'd be tripping over people on your doorstep,
Yeah.
in the subway. Uh, Really, it was just it was terrible. Homelessness was awful, and the poverty levels were really bad. And for a group of us who had you know been privileged and been able to really get get professional jobs and we're doing well, um, we saw this and we were part of it. And I grown up saying, you got to take care of others, but we didn't know how.
Was there
And we,
not access in that? Because I just wrote down like it didn't seem like there was like, oh, we could just plug in, or we could just go, oh, let's just go join this movement over here and get involved. It wasn't that, right?
it wasn't anything like that. It wasn't anything like that. But what there was, Tommy, was if you were coming out of college and working one of these jobs, you were getting invitations to go to, junior events for the opera,
Okay. Yeah.
or for some, good fresh air fun, really good organizations. But you couldn't, you were just given money. You weren't giving time. You weren't involved. You weren't able to get uh, to really feel like you were making a difference, other than writing a check and going to a party.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
that was frustrating. And there also was a distinct lack of community. We came out of college where we were, hanging out with friends and doing things together and felt part of a community. And all of a sudden, you're in New York City, uh, and those communities were kind of blown wide open, and you didn't have connection uh, like you were used to,
Yeah.
either in high school or college. Anyway, so I just said, talking to a friend of mine, I said, I've got to do something different. Writing a check or going to these parties and then tripping over homelessness on the way to my Korean grocer or to my health club isn't going to do it. And so I pulled a bunch of friends together, and we said, let's try to get more involved. Let's try to get involved with organizations and really do some volunteer work.
So what? Yeah. So first of all, I want to underscore something there, folks. You might be frustrated with things, and then you can go continue to be frustrated, or you can say, I'm going to be part of the change, and I'm going to do something about it, and I'm going to make the world a better place, and that's where we're getting to, and I want to hear about that. But I something is pressing me, and I gotta ask you this question really quick, and it might take us in a total different direction, but we're going to get to back, I promise, to what this opportunity created for you, but you say social welfare household. Your dad was a union leader. We're in a time in history, Noah, where unions are, trying to support the members. I grew up in a union household. My father worked for the phone company. We every 3 years in August we were out on strike, or, the worst was in '89. I think it was 6 months they were out. And growing up, and I'm not going to say I have all the answers here, and I'm not. This is not a political show in any way, and I'm not trying to make it that. The unions are there to protect the people, and that social welfare that you're talking about, looking out, and obviously these big companies don't want the unions there. Anything, I was on a show, we did this show last week, and it came up, and it was just like, I'm wondering if this sector needs to be unionized to protect the people in the nonprofit sector, to get them, to get the direct care workers who are making $17 an hour and have to work a second job just to make ends meet, and they're taking care of people's disabled children, disabled adults, intellectual developmental disabilities, people with the OMH space, and they're on the front lines living and working in group homes with folks, and they're not being supported. This is me more ranting than anything else, but I want to key into that piece about, growing up, as you say, in a social welfare home. Do you have anything to add from that union perspective about just like, God, that's how the men and women are protected by those organizations?
Well, it's a great question, Tommy. And if you look at uh, income inequality, uh, really it has exploded
Yeah.
since 1980, Reagan becoming president, because he directly attacked unions. Unions built the middle class in this country. They provide dignity, benefits, and representation. And what has happened in the 45 years, 40 years since, is that a lot of these folks have been stripped of that.
Yeah.
And you see it. You see it in people having to work, uh, two jobs and still
Still not
be
me.
food insecure.
Yeah.
Um, you see it in uh, the layoffs and the wage disparity. Um, you see it in the lack of benefits and
Yeah.
political power. It's a big deal. It's a great question about the nonprofit sector, because it's huge. And
Yeah.
you look, I mean, one of the biggest issues in the nonprofit sector in New York is that uh, our nonprofits can't get paid.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, they're waiting a year, 18 months to get paid. And how do you carry that?
How are you supposed to float that? I'm not mad at you. How are you supposed to float that, New York State? How are you supposed to float that, federal government? I'm supposed to give all these services that we know. Here goes the rant. I feel it coming. I'm supposed to, as this nonprofit, give all these services that the government could not do if they wanted to do, and if we assigned it to them, they wouldn't be able to do it. My opinion, everybody, right? But I believe they couldn't. But then I have to now float payroll for 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. I'm closing my doors. What are we talking about here?
Yeah.
I'm amazed by this stuff. I just Googled this really quick. In 2022, New York's nonprofit sector employed 1.3 million people. 1 in 6 private sector jobs in the state are people who work for nonprofits or organizations. So, gang, I asked this ridiculous question, are nonprofits a big deal? Of course they are. Yeah, I mean, it's 1 in every 6 private sector jobs is a nonprofit. 1.3 million in the state. The number, here it is. Here's the other part I wanted. New York City nonprofits employed in 22, 662,000 people. 662,025. That's a massive amount of people.
That's 1 in 10, 1 in 12 people.
Come on, man, that's wild.
Yeah.
And those people, are not taken care of. I own an employee benefits agency, with my 2 partners. We own an agency called Vanguard Benefits. So we are constantly in these conversations around culture, HR, employee benefits, right? We just launched the Vanguard Benefits Hall of Fame Award, and we're very excited about that because these Hall of Fame employers. And I tell you that not to pitch our company. I tell everybody that because that's what I'm in these dialogues, and we're like, nonprofits want so bad to take care of their people. It doesn't work 100% of the time. So I'm on a rant. We're all over the map as usual. I'm probably gonna, I'm gonna focus on this whole thing about more and better access to benefits. I'm glad I met you because I'm putting together a panel discussion, and we'll talk offline that it might be something you might want to be part of as it relates to these types of conversations.
Well, it's an issue we have at Adam's house because we're so small that uh, our our workers are, the people who make the nonprofit run are either volunteers or they're contract employees because we just can't manage having them on contract and doing the benefits and all that for right now.
Yeah.
And it's very tough.
I remember something, not to go all the way left field, but I remember a bunch of years ago, when the Affordable Care Act came out. And this is just an anecdote, but I knew a woman who worked in a supermarket, and she got her benefits from work. And the supermarket, I'm not going to mention their name, but they brought everybody down under full time, so they didn't have to give them benefits. So this woman, had to go get a second job, a second part-time job, and neither one got her health insurance. So this was like the stuff that go. It's just so tough. We could sit here and rant about different things. I'm glad you're here. When we come back, what I want to do, we're gonna take a quick break. We come back. I want to get into, you saw this challenge, you saw this problem. I call it an opportunity. There was lack of community for folks coming out of school, young people who are, on trajectories, on successful career tracks, but we're saying we want to give back, we want to make impact, we want to be more involved. And that's where when we come back, you're gonna tell me what happened from that. How's that sound?
Great, Tommy. Thanks.
Very good. We are right back. Philanthropy in Focus.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays, 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a high-achieving, growth-oriented leader? Are you interested in developing your authentic leadership while creating a healthy, inclusive workplace? Hi, I'm Dr. Mira Brancu, host of The Hard Skills on talkradio.nyc at 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, where we discuss how leaders develop the hard skills needed to make a greater impact. We interview experts, have live coaching, and tackle these challenges. Listen to The Hard Skills on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Nonprofits need connections to move in good directions. So cut through all the static. Join Tommy in his attic.
We are back. Tommy's gonna do a little singing. Actually, I try not to date where we're at, because you may find this 100 years from now and you go, oh, I missed that event. It was 100 years ago. But I will tell you, tomorrow night, I am going to see the Goods, Brendan Levy, who is the singer of the song you just heard, Nonprofits Need Connections. Brendan and I wrote that song together. Brendan Levy, singer of Damaged Goods, will be playing at Docks down in Island Park, South Shore, Long Island. I will be there. I love seeing that. They used to be called the Goods. No, that's my friend. He's with the Queens Chamber of Commerce. He's the vice president of business development at the chamber. He's a good friend of mine. And his band back in the 90s, they had a deal and they were called the Goods. But since they're old men now, they renamed themselves as Damaged Goods. So Damaged Goods will be playing out at Docks. Now the place is probably going to be packed. I probably can't even get in now. Forget it. Brendan, I'll be waving from the parking lot. All right, so let's get into it. So tell me, we're right up against this story. It took us to a break. You come to this crossroads, right? Where I guess you could have just taken those donation checks and gone to the Met, opera, junior opera people, whatever that looked like, right? But then what I'm hearing from you, and I'm hearing it from your heart too, is that was not the change that needed to be made. That wasn't, you didn't feel the impact of
No,
what could be changed.
not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. And we wanted to make a difference.
Yeah.
So, and I knew that my friends felt the same way.
Yeah. Yeah.
That they had, they just said, we got to get involved. We got to do something.
Right.
And we spent the summer, group of us. I pulled a bunch of friends together, and we each said, let's just go out and try to volunteer, do work with wherever we want. And that was the time of the welfare hotels and the homeless hotels. So I went to try to volunteer there. I had friends who were trying to volunteer with seniors, kids. Anyway, it was almost impossible.
Impossible meaning like, I mean, again, it's a paradigm situation, right? I know the paradigm. I call a bunch of nonprofits and say, can we do a volunteer event there? It's going to happen, right? So, but again, I live in 2025, so that just didn't exist, that level of access.
Yeah, you'd call up an organization, you wouldn't get anybody. They wouldn't have a volunteer coordinator. If they did, you had to go in for, weeks of training, and you could only volunteer on Thursdays for 2 hours every week. It was not flexible. It was isolated. If you could get through to it. And the city had this place called the Mayor's Voluntary Action Center, which was pretty useless.
Mm-hmm.
And we all got back together at the end of the summer and just said, this isn't working.
Everybody was trying to do, let me just get the context right. You were going out trying to find opportunities. You kind of guys like, okay, break. Everybody go try to figure this thing out. And then everybody's coming back and going, we're unsuccessful here, man. There's like, this is broken. I'm looking at the website right now. And well, I'm not going to tell, you'll tell them the name of the organization in a bit. But in 1987, a group of friends who wanted to volunteer found themselves frustrated by the fractured nonprofit landscape, making volunteer opportunities hard to find. They wanted a centralized way to organize efforts and access communities, right? I mean, so everybody went out, let's go, check it out, break, and then come back and go, this is a mess, my words, but that's what it sounds like.
So what we did was we first, as a group, we started to do some volunteering stuff. We offered meals on Thanksgiving. We did a couple things. And then we just said we need a new paradigm. We need a new organization. And so I wrote the business plan for what has become New York Cares, and it was essentially making volunteer work, direct access work, more accessible and also community based. And our very first fundraisers were not fundraisers. We said we want to get community together. We don't want you to give money. We want you to bring something and bring your time. And
So
that
let's
was
talk about that. Let me just stop you there and talk about that. By the way, gang, NewYorkCares.org. I'm sharing the website. I'm on the part of the story that that Noah and I are talking about. But what did that mean? They weren't fundraisers. They were bring somebody. It was more like friend raisers.
They were first the first ones we did down in Rothman's. Ken Gidden was one of our board members who was starting up a clothing store, and we said, we don't want you to bring money. We want you to bring clothes. Just bring something that you can donate.
Okay.
And we thought we were going to have 50 to 75 people. We had 300.
Come on. Oh man, talk about underestimating, the interest, huh? That's a home run. Oh man.
And then we did another fundraiser where we asked people to bring books to support the library. Don't give us money, just give us book. Now, that we were lucky because we could talk about how you start a nonprofit, but we had a couple of angels who gave us some foundations and friends who gave us some good donations to help us get started, get off the ground. Anyway, but it was not just making volunteer work more accessible. It was also about community.
Mm-hmm.
So that the volunteer opportunities were group volunteer opportunities.
Yeah.
So 10 folks would go up to a Covenant house and volunteer for a couple of hours. And we evolved that into literally now New York Cares has thousands of assignments every week.
Yeah.
And they're usually group assignments led by volunteers where you can do something for an hour a week, an hour a month, something for a year special. And we also get corporations involved, very involved in terms of their employees pitching in. But it was a community building exercise, and it really helped energize a lot of the nonprofits. I mean, literally working with hundreds of nonprofits in New York. And ultimately what happened, New York Cares morphed into a worldwide organization, not independently, but there were offshoots, either CARES organizations or what were known as hands-on organizations. They're now all over the world.
Margaret Mead, never doubt that a small group of committed citizens can change the world, because in fact it is the only thing it ever has. I mean, what happens, Noah Gotbaum, if you decided to just put your head down and not you and your friends? It isn't just you. I know it's not an ego thing, but what if you didn't? What if you didn't do the work? I always question these things. What if, and that's life though. That's the whole thing. That's the whole ball of wax. It's like crossroads. I can just go this way, but I went that way. Is that Robert Frost? I think it's Robert Frost. And it's like by making a decision, and a decision, gang, Tony Robbins used to have this thing about decisions. It's to cut off anything else, the decision to go in this direction and to cut off all the other things, burn your ships, burn your boats, whatever it might be. These types of conversations I'm inspired by, because I know for a fact that a group of young people who wanted to change the world did, and that's why there's these hands-on organizations around the world that they wouldn't exist. There might be something else in its place, but this wouldn't exist if it wasn't for you leaning in and your friends and colleagues leaning in. And shout out, as you mentioned, some angels, because we do know that somebody has to fund certain parts of these things for them to actually work. And when we come back, we'll talk a little bit about strategy and fundraising and programmatic stuff, because I want to get into what it looks like to be an interim leader and how that's worked for you. And then obviously we're going to talk about Adam's House, and we already referenced it, some of the challenges at Adam's House, just because of the way the sector is set up. But the thing, who listens to my show? Well, friends of mine, people I'll never probably meet, and leaders of nonprofit organizations and board members of nonprofit organizations, and somebody who wants to join a board or who wants to work in the sector. So having somebody like you to drop so much knowledge that we're going to continue to go into today, I think is just a boon to my listeners and certainly a boon for the community. So I'm appreciative that you're here. When we come back, we'll go into, you know, what was kind of the next step, some of the spaces you stayed along the way, and we'll get into Adam's house when we come back. Sounds good?
Sounds good. Thanks, Tommy.
You're welcome. Right back. Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host the program Philanthropy and Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
Hi, I'm Linda Marsanico. The A Train to Sedona is a memoir about my journey to love and compassion. It's also the name of my new broadcast on Wednesdays at 12 noon. When we are spiritual, we embrace possibilities and ideas, which strengthen our mind, body, spirit, health, and wisdom. On the A Train to Sedona broadcast, I plan to interview guests who embrace these expansive practices. Join us on Wednesdays at 12 noon on Talk Radio New York City.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Nonprofits need connections to move in good directions. So cut through all the static. Join Tommy in his attic.
So, how involved to this day are you with New York Cares, Noah? Is it still something that's always in the background? You always have a connection to the organization?
I'll always have a connection to the organization. What happened was I ended up, I didn't want to run the organization. I became the first board chair. I went off to graduate school, and then I was very interested in what was going on in Eastern Europe and community development there. So I ended up moving to Europe, and I thought I was going for a year or two. I ended up going for 15 years. And was working in the private sector, enjoyed it, met my wife, my kids were born there over in Europe, and then finally ended up coming back to New York. And then I got back on the board of New York Cares, which I completely enjoyed. And then my life took a real turn. My wife passed away in 2007 when I had, three young kids.
Wow.
And it was quite sudden. I had a business at the time, and I had to close it down and focus on my kids.
Wow.
And that ultimately led me to getting involved with Adam's House and more focus on the nonprofit sector. My kids were in public schools and I started to get involved in education, and I was elected to the school board, and I ran the school board on the Upper West Side in Harlem, and finally decided that I really wanted to be focused full-time on nonprofit work, and was asked to run a homelessness and housing organization up in Connecticut. And I said, this looks great. And so I commuted for a while, and then I moved up to Connecticut and was running an organization that was called Bridgeport Neighborhood Trust. And I didn't realize that it was really in trouble. It was in dire straits.
Where you came in at the C level, executive director, CEO, or something like that?
I had done stuff in housing and community development. And so when I sent my resume to some nonprofit headhunters, they said, well, what do you think about Bridgeport? And I looked into it, and I just said, this looks like, a great opportunity. So I came in as the CEO, but I came in after they had a founding executive director there for 15 years.
You were the next in to that role?
I was the next in.
Yeah.
And again, I wasn't told that they were about 3 months from closing their doors.
So that's an interesting part of the story, but I want to hone in on something else that I think in our sector and the for-profit sector I think is relevant as well. But that, let me just say founder syndrome, but like just that founder, the founding exec moving on and that whole thing and that transition, and maybe some of that I'm sure some of that goes into the interim work that you've done, and that it also goes on in our sector. When you think of that, I think of one organization in particular here on Long Island. If I start ranting about it and telling that great story, we'll lose 5 minutes. So I'll just pause. But in those scenarios, that founder can be helpful or hurtful in that juncture, at that point there. Can you shine some light on what I'm referring to there?
Yeah, I mean, with New York Cares, we did not have that issue because I I said I don't want to run this organization. I was going off to graduate school. I said I'll be the board chair. Built the board. I helped raise the money. But we were we decided to hire, an outside executive director. We brought in a guy named Kenneth Adams, who now runs LaGuardia Community College, and he was phenomenal. And he
Yep.
basically took the idea and went with it. So we didn't really have a founder issue then. We just helped guide it and build the organization. In Bridgeport, we had there was just an absolutely wonderful kind of a founding executive director, who built the organization from the ground up.
That's great. Yeah.
But it was just time. She decided she wanted to move on.
Yeah.
Great woman named Liz Torres, and there was a leadership vacuum
Mm-hmm.
for a while, and finances were difficult, and so the board I didn't know it, but was basically deciding that they were just going to end up merging with another organization.
Wow. And so that was an option before you were coming in. Maybe we're just going to merge, or
I didn't know it, but it was an option
even while you were coming on board.
When I came on board. They said, they were going to hire a consultant to look at the merger.
Wow. That's that's day one. Hey, here's the cafeteria, here's the break room, and oh, by the way, this is what we're doing. That's tough.
And I just said, time out. You hired me. Let's take a look at this. And I did, and I just said, I think we can make this work.
How long were you there?
I was there for almost 3 years.
Okay. And it's still, now where is it now?
We rebranded it. We tripled our private donations. We tripled our government contracts. A lot of the affordable housing that had been built was in the middle of being built, had stalled because it wasn't financed, and we restarted those and got them going, and then the organization, which did a lot of counseling work, housing counseling work, we
this is the organization, right? Building Neighborhoods Together.
Building Neighborhoods Together. Yeah, we rebranded it because it wasn't just Bridgeport. It was we serviced the whole state.
Wow.
And also for fundraising purposes, the potential to raise money throughout Connecticut, and especially in Fairfield County, was tremendous. But if you say that you're just Bridgeport,
right,
people are not going to want to necessarily be part of that.
Even if you're doing the work all around, the thing is, it said Bridgeport, right? So that's like a branding issue. So that's why you rebrand. Yeah.
But even if we were only doing the work in Bridgeport, people don't know it, but Bridgeport is part of Fairfield County, which is one of the richest counties in the country.
Okay.
And people want to help their neighbors, but if they don't, if they don't feel connected, they don't know. They don't necessarily get involved. And so we broaden that, and ultimately we were very involved in the state's um, uh, COVID efforts, because they were giving out money to keep people from being evicted, eviction prevention.
Mm-hmm.
And so we really ramped up our counseling work, and ultimately, Building Neighborhoods Together has really focused much more on housing counseling than on providing affordable housing, because that's a very tough business, and you need thousands of units to make it work. And it's now it's a flourishing organization, and they're doing great counseling work and financial literacy all over the state, and very, very happy to do it, fortunate to do it. And then I stepped down and started to advise and coach in the nonprofit sector, mostly on strategy and fundraising, which I really enjoyed. The coaching side has just been tremendous, but also the consulting work. And one of the clients I was working with told me about Adam's House.
So let's talk about Adam's House. Tell me about it. First of all, thank you for sharing, and my condolences on the loss of your wife. And certainly life is interesting, how we transition when things impact us and we go in different directions and things like that. But let's talk about Adam's House, and let's talk about, the importance of grief support. Let's get into that. I will share the website while you start to have this conversation with me a little bit.
Yeah, it's a little known fact that one in 10 kids, 1 in 12 kids under the age of 18 experiences an early loss, either of a sibling or a caregiver, a parent. And that's two kids in every classroom.
Yeah.
And before the age of 25, it doubles.
Wow. So you
literally have millions of American kids who've experienced early loss. And the impact, Tommy, is if it goes unresolved and they don't get help and support, it leads to addiction issues, school issues, incarceration, family breakup, suicide. It's generational, because the trauma that a kid faces when they're, as my kids faced when they were 8, 6, and 3, they face the trauma of not having support and being isolated and having to deal with this, and the parents usually don't know how to deal with it either.
Yeah.
And so what happened in my case is there was nowhere to turn. Didn't know, and I didn't have any programs. And that's exactly what the situation was for the founder of Adam's House, Allison Wisoda. And she lost her husband suddenly, 3 boys, and there were no programs, solid programs, support programs for her or her kids. And what happens is the community doesn't understand how to deal with loss. If a kid passes away or a parent passes away, the teachers don't know how to deal with it. The counselors don't know how to deal with it, and the kids and the families feel isolated, and the parents don't know how to deal with it.
No,
and
parent is, if it's a loss of a spouse, the parent is going through their own grief process, and in your case, and it sounds like Adam's mom's case, it was a sudden situation, right?
It was Adam. Adam was Allison's husband.
Okay.
Passed away.
Excuse me. So Adam. Okay. Thank you for the context. So sudden, right? So that sudden thing, and there, listen, death and loss is tragic no matter what. However, there's a different scenario if someone's ill, and there's a longer process, I guess you would say.
But even that, I mean, we run these programs, and many of our family, our kids, and and parent participants have lost either a child, a sibling, or a parent to longer term illness.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's violence, but sometimes it's cancer.
Sure.
And the lack of support, whether it's sudden or long term, is still there. The isolation that the kids and the families feel, and the guilt, the many feelings.
Yeah.
And Adam's House is there, has an amazing 8-week program, which is pretty unique because a lot of grief centers work on a drop-in basis. Adam's House is curriculum based. It's an 8-week program that families go to together.
Let's do this though. Let's take a quick break, come back, because then I want to hear all about the programs of the organization. So we're going to break quick. We come back and we'll finish going into the programs and the work that this important organization is doing. Right back.
Great.
Were you an essential worker during the pandemic? If you needed to learn stages of epilepsy, did you depend on advocates? Did you use new innovations to cope with mental and neurological issues? Maintaining high quality of life and keeping good mental health are what we all strive for. I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each week top healthcare influencers, professionals, and innovators answer these questions and more. Stay tuned on Thursdays at 5 p.m. on talkradio.nyc, and I will continue to be frank about health with all of you.
Ready to serve up success with a splash? Hi, I'm Bruce Kramer, aka the corporate cockroach.
I'm the Renaissance woman, Angie Snowball.
And I'm your strategy doctor, Dr. Navtej Desange, inviting you to serving up success with a splash.
Join us as we shake things up with real talk and real strategies centered around awareness, action, and accountability.
And yes, there really is a cocktail involved. Please join us and sip your way to success.
Serving up success with a splash, where wisdom meets happy hours. Cheers!
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 You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Nonprofits need connections to move in good directions. So cut through all the static. Join Tommy in his attic.
That's right. Cut through the static. Tommy in his attic. Go to the website, everybody. AdamsHouseCT.org. AdamsHouseCT.org. CT for Connecticut. I noticed real quick a couple things I got to point out, and then we get right back into it. I have another program I do. I have several things I do, but another program, one of them specifically is called #Ending the Stigma Together, all around normalizing conversations around mental health and bringing down the stigma and really ending it as a unit, as a society, ending the stigma. And I just bring it up because trauma, you mentioned trauma, and that trauma can lead to so many things when it's not addressed. And organizations like yours are really doing the work to address that. I showed some of the programming. Again, go to the website, adamshousect.org. Some of the programs, let's go into that, Noah. What does this look like in application?
Tommy, it's built after the experience that many of us had. It was actually modeled on an organization called Olivia's House in Pennsylvania. Allison, who is an absolutely dynamic person, said, my kids needed this. So many kids need this, and it hasn't been available. And so she made it happen, and raised money and bought this house up in Connecticut in Shelton, and set up this program modeled on a program out in Pennsylvania. And the main program is called Helping Hearts Heal. It's an 8-week, what we call closed program. So the intake is for families that have kids between 5 and 18 who've experienced loss. And parents and the kids do it all together. And it's one night a week. You have to start with a group, you finish with a group, and there's a fixed curriculum. Every week we do a different topic. And it's transformative.
Yeah.
It's transformative for the 5-year-olds that we have a special curriculum for. It's transformative for the teens, the middles, and the parents. Because so many of us, we have, what do you do? Do you not mention the person who's passed away? Do you take away the pictures?
Yeah.
Or do you talk about it? If you talk about it, how do you talk about it? Is it, we really try to kind of celebrate the people we've lost, but also it's a peer support. So everybody in the group again meets every week. They become completely close. You can't believe how close these groups become. We're usually doing about 25 parents and kids at a time over an 8-week session. And again, different topics each week: memories, emotions, feelings. And it's really the first time for most, certainly the kids and the parents, to be able to talk openly. And so many of them say that they're talking about things that they haven't discussed with anyone, even their therapist.
It sounds like a roadmap that they don't have. They don't, this doesn't come with a roadmap when there's a loss, but this gives that some of that. Is that fair?
Well, it's fair in terms of the curriculum, Tommy.
Yeah.
But Allison likes to say that everybody's grief journey is different.
Okay. Sure.
Everybody experiences loss differently. So if it's a roadmap, it's a roadmap of just making sure that the different topics and the feelings get covered, and that everyone feels like they're in a safe place to express their emotions and talk about and really heal. It's about healing.
Yeah.
And also what we try to do is give the kids and the parents the tools to move forward, because so many of these folks these kids and parents who experience loss, they become isolated. They're at school and again, the kids don't know what to say to them. The teachers don't know what to say to them. And it just makes the problem worse. Yeah. And the parents don't know what to say to them. And so we open that up. And so when they get out, they not only have a network of kids and parents who understand what they've been through because they've been through it themselves,
right?
But they also have the tools to kind of manage going on. And it's huge because we like to say that mental health is economic development. But, when kids and parents experience loss, they drop out of school, families break up, people can't hold a job, you have addiction issues. And what happens when they go through programs like ours is they get to, they restart their lives and they reintegrate, and they're stronger, more resilient, and feel like they can go on. And they also have a network.
Yeah, that support system is huge that you're talking about. Just to have people who understand what I'm going through. Again, it's an individual situation, but to have people who have some awareness of it. Everybody's, as you say, is going to grieve differently, but to have somebody who you can call who gets it, who has that similar experience.
Well, and they're spending 3 hours a week for 2 months talking about their own grief and own loss.
Yeah.
And again, for our littles group, which is 5 to 8, it's a different we do a lot of artwork and working with those kids, up to the teens who generally don't want to, talk about anything and don't really want to be there. And then they end up saying, can we come longer?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
can we do another program?
I mean, so much of it is like there's somebody who looks like me who's going through the same thing I'm going through that I didn't know that anybody else was, right? The other kids in my class don't get it. They don't know how to engage me. They care. They just don't know how. But here, these individuals know what I'm dealing with, right?
Well, and also they're holding so much in. Everyone is holding so much in, Tommy.
Yeah.
And this is about, opening up and sharing.
How can we?
And
Sorry, Noah. How can we help? How can we get involved? What does the organization need? Yeah, that will come back for that one. You want to do another episode?
we need, and one of the reasons that I've tried to help there is, we want to expand. We have a waiting list of a triple-digit waiting list, over 100 kids and families who want to get into our programs, and we have the capacity. We just don't have the money.
Yeah.
And so we need to branch out, raise money, and do a little bit of what we did in. We want to bring our programs. We have participants from all over, from the New York State border all the way up to New Haven. But we really need to raise money, and that's a tough thing to break into if you're a less than $1 million organization.
Yeah. We know, and the majority of organizations, as we know, on the pyramid of nonprofits are significantly on the lower end. I mean, the top of the pyramid are the majors, and then there's many, many smaller organizations. I want to bring you back on another. Maybe we have just a Facebook Live. Maybe we bring Allison on, talk about fundraising, talk about strategies. I want to get you connected to the Nonprofit Resource Hub, which is an organization we founded. And everybody go to nonprofitresourcehub.org. I'm one of the founders of that. For you and I know I'm throwing in the chat, but we'll have a conversation, next week about some different ways to connect. I just want to, I thank you for being here. I thank you, Allison, for what you're doing from an organization perspective, for creating this organization, and in memory of your husband, Adam, to just be a change maker and making the world a better place as a legacy to him. And this show that's what this show is all about for me. It's just about continuing to have these dialogues around the important work nonprofit organizations are doing. So I want to offline, you and I'll talk. You tell me how we can help, how we can get you guys connected to some of the different resources and efforts I'm involved with.
We need volunteers. We need to raise money. We're going to expand into the urban areas because it's low-income families, which make up a lot of our participants, experience loss at a much greater level than their peers.
I got one quick question, then we got to go. Do you know Vince Santelli and and my friend Bob Kozlowski? Because I know you guys got connected to Shelton, so I'm sure you know Bob, who's with the PD there in Shelton, and Vince over at the Veterans Home, right?
Yeah, Vince. Vince and I worked very closely together when I was at BNT in Bridgeport.
I thought you
doing amazing work, homes for heroes, and just there are phenomenal nonprofit organizations everywhere, people doing God's work. Yeah. We just need the support. We are Adams House, AdamsHouseCT.org. But people can volunteer.
Yep.
And give their time, and we need financial help.
We got to leave it there. They need support. They need help. You want to do that, you go to AdamsHouseCT.org. I'm the nonprofit sector connector. Got to get out of this attic here before I melt. Everybody, make it a great week. I'll see you back here next Friday. Noah Gotbaum, thank you for being here. Appreciate your friendship and the connection. Make it a great day, everybody. See you.
Thanks, Tommy.
Profits need connections to move in good direction.